The space station was bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in the darkness between stars, a massive ring of metal and light that served as the meeting place for all the species of the galaxy. They called it Unity Station, and it was here that the fate of entire planets was decided. Lieutenant Park stood at the entrance of the observation deck, her small bag hanging from her shoulder. She was 26 years old, born in a small town near, and she had never imagined she would travel so far from home. The ceiling above her stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Artificial sunlight poured down from panels that mimicked a yellow star. Everywhere she looked, she saw aliens. Some were tall and covered in scales. Others floated through the air like jellyfish made of light. A few walked on 6 legs, their bodies covered in hard shells that clicked against the metal floor. And then there were had read about them during her journey here. They were the dominant species in this part of the galaxy. They stood over 3 meters tall, with 4 muscular arms and skin the color of dark iron. Their eyes glowed faintly orange, and their faces held expressions that humans found hard to read. They had ruled over dozens of star systems for millions of years, and they considered themselves the greatest warriors in existence. Right now, about 20 of them were staring at her. She walked forward, keeping her face calm. Behind her, Captain followed closely. He was 42 years old, a veteran of the Korean Special Forces, and he had been the one to select her for this mission. His face showed no emotion, but could sense the tension in his shoulders. The observation deck opened into a massive arena. At its center was a firing range unlike anything on Earth. Holographic projectors lined the walls, ready to create targets that could appear and disappear in the blink of an eye. This was where the Unity Games would be held. This was where humanity would prove its worth to the galaxy. Or fail completely. A deep rumbling voice echoed through the space. So, the humans have finally arrived. Commander stepped forward from the group of. He was even larger than the others, his 4 arms thick with muscle, his orange eyes burning with barely hidden amusement. Gold markings on his chest showed his rank. He was the senior weapons instructor of Unity Station, and he had trained warriors from 100 different species. He looked down at like she was an insect. When we received word that Earth was sending their finest marksmen, said, his voice carrying across the deck, I expected something more. Laughter erupted from the aliens around them. They made deep, booming sounds. The insect-like clicked their mandibles together rapidly. Even the crystalline beings made of living glass produced a high-pitched humming that served as their version of mockery. Said nothing. She simply stood there, her hands clasped behind her back, her dark eyes watching without fear. She is small, one of them said, even for a human. And female, another added. Do humans not have male warriors? Perhaps their males are even weaker, suggested, and another wave of laughter followed. Captain's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. They had expected this. They had prepared for this. The galaxy had only known about humanity for 18 months, ever since a scout ship had detected radio signals coming from Earth. In that time, humans had been studied, measured, and dismissed. They were too slow, too fragile. They were too short. Their technology was primitive. To the ancient species of the galaxy, humans were nothing more than clever animals who had somehow stumbled into space. Tell me, little human, said, leaning down until his face was close to us. His breath was hot and smelled like copper. Do you even understand what you are competing against? My species has been perfecting the art of combat for 60 million years. Our reflexes operate at 3 milliseconds. We can process visual information faster than your machines can measure. What can you possibly offer against such perfection? Met his gaze calmly. I can offer my best, Commander. Straightened up, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture of mock generosity. Your best? How touching. He turned to address the crowd. The Unity Games exist to determine the standing of each species in our compact. The better you perform, the more respect your people earn, the more favorable your trade agreements. the more protection you receive. He turned back to, perform poorly and your species will be classified as a dependent race. You will serve the greater species. Your resources will be allocated to those who can use them better. Your people will become servants. The word hung in the air like poison. From the back of the crowd, a young stepped forward. His exoskeleton was bright green, marking him as barely an adult by his species standards. Commander, perhaps we should show mercy. The humans did not ask to be discovered. They are not ready for galactic society. Waved one of his hands dismissively. Mercy is for the weak, young one. This is how the galaxy works. The strong rise, the weak serve. It has always been this way. Private First Class Han appeared at side. He was 24, thin and nervous-looking, with glasses that he constantly adjusted. He was her spotter, her technical support, and right now, he looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Lieutenant," he whispered, "the equipment is ready, but I have to tell you something. I analyzed their testing parameters. They've modified the difficulty settings. The targets will appear 30% faster than standard." His expression didn't change. "I see." "They're cheating," said his voice shaking slightly. "They're actually cheating against us." "Did you expect fairness?" Opened his mouth, then closed it. He had hoped. He had believed that an advanced civilization would be above such petty tricks, but looking at the sneering faces around them, he understood the truth. The galaxy was not fair. The galaxy was not kind. The galaxy was a competition, and humanity was losing before they had even begun. Captain moved closer too. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can file a protest, demand fair conditions." "And they will laugh at us even more," replied. "They will say that humans cannot compete without special treatment, that we need help, that we are weak." She looked up at her captain, and for a moment something fierce burned in her eyes. "My grandmother survived the war. My mother worked in factories until her hands bled so that I could go to school. I did not travel across the stars to file a protest." Captain studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Then show them who we are." Turned back to face. The massive alien was watching her with those glowing orange eyes, waiting for her to break, to cry, to beg for easier conditions. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out her weapon. It was a K-11 rifle, standard issue for the Korean military, modified for vacuum operation and long-range accuracy. To the aliens, it looked primitive, simple, almost laughable compared to their plasma cannons and particle beams. It was an extension of her soul. "I am ready to begin," she said. His mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. "Then let us see what humanity's finest can do." The crowd began to gather around the firing range. Screens throughout the station flickered to life, broadcasting the event to audiences across 100 star systems. Billions of beings would watch what happened next. Billions of beings would judge humanity based on the performance of one small woman from Earth. Walked to the firing line and took her position. She thought of her grandmother, who had told her stories of survival. She thought of her mother, who had taught her to never give up. She thought of her planet, blue and green and beautiful, floating alone in the darkness. And she waited for the countdown to begin. The firing range stretched out before like a dark ocean. The walls were covered with thousands of tiny projectors, each one capable of creating holographic targets anywhere in the three-dimensional space. The floor was made of some material that absorbed sound, making the arena feel strangely dead and silent. She had trained for this moment her entire life, not specifically for shooting at alien targets on a space station, of course, but for the pressure, for the weight of expectations, for the feeling of being alone against impossible odds. Back on Earth, she had been considered strange, a girl who spent hours at the shooting range instead of going to parties, a teenager who studied bullet physics instead of fashion, A young woman who joined the military when all her friends were going to university. Her father had not understood. Her teachers had worried about her. Only her mother had seen the truth. "You have a gift," her mother had told her once. "Not just in your hands, in your mind. You see things others cannot see. Use it." Now, standing in an alien arena light years from home, finally understood what her mother had meant. Commander was explaining the rules to the assembled crowd, his booming voice echoing off the walls. The shifting grid is the ultimate test of marksmanship. Targets will appear randomly throughout the arena. Each target exists for less than 1/10 of a second before disappearing. The contestant must hit as many targets as possible within 60 seconds. He paused for dramatic effect. The current record is held by champion of the 3rd Battalion, 847 targets in 60 seconds, a score that has stood unchallenged for 300 years. The in the crowd made sounds of approval. Several of them raised their 4 fists in salute to their legendary champion, who had died centuries ago, but was still remembered as the greatest shooter in galactic history. "The human will now attempt to match this achievement," continued, and he could not keep the mockery out of his voice. "We wish her luck." More laughter, more clicking and humming and rumbling from the alien audience. Private Han was positioned in a small booth overlooking the arena. His fingers moved nervously over his equipment, checking and rechecking the sensors. Through his earpiece, he whispered too, "I've confirmed the modifications. They've increased target speed by 32% and reduced target size by 15%. This is way beyond standard difficulty." "Understood," replied softly. "Lieutenant, I have to be honest with you. Based on my calculations, even the best shooter would struggle with these settings. They're not just trying to make you fail, they're trying to humiliate you." Adjusted her grip on her rifle. "Then we will have to exceed their calculations." In the viewing gallery, Captain stood among the alien ambassadors. The delegation kept clicking their mandibles in what seemed like anticipation of disaster. They floated silently, their crystalline bodies refracting the light into rainbow patterns, and they watched with the confidence of predators who had already won. A young female approached Captain. Unlike the warriors, she wore simple robes and carried a data tablet. "You are the human commander?" she asked. Nodded. "I am. I am researcher. I study lesser species." She paused, seeming to realize how that sounded. "I mean no offense. It is simply my field of work." "None taken," said, though his jaw tightened slightly. Looked down at the arena where was preparing. "I have studied your species extensively since first contact. Your physical capabilities are quite limited. Slow reflexes, weak bodies, short. But there is something in your brain structure that puzzles me." "Oh." "Your pattern recognition centers are unusually developed, far more than any other species we have encountered. At first, my colleagues dismissed this as compensation for your physical weaknesses, but I believe there is something more to it." She turned her orange eyes to. "I believe humans see the universe differently than we do." Before could respond, a loud horn sounded through the arena. The challenge was about to begin. Raised her rifle to her shoulder. The weapon felt familiar, comfortable, like shaking hands with an old friend. She had fired this rifle thousands of times. She knew exactly how it would kick, how the bullet would fly, how the sound would echo. But she had never fired it at targets moving this fast. The holographic projectors hummed to life. The walls seemed to shimmer as the system prepared to generate targets. In the viewing gallery, aliens leaned forward with anticipation. On screens across the galaxy, billions watched. "Contestant ready?" an automated voice asked. "Ready," replied. "Countdown beginning. 10, 9, 8. She closed her eyes for a moment. In her mind, she saw her mother's face. She heard her grandmother's voice telling stories of hardship and survival. She felt the weight of her entire species resting on her shoulders. 7, 6, 5. She opened her eyes. Everything seemed sharper now, clearer. The world had narrowed down to just the arena, just the rifle, just the targets that were about to appear. 4, 3, 2. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, not pressing, just ready. 1, begin. The first target appeared. It was a small disk of blue light, no larger than a human fist, flickering into existence in the upper left corner of the arena. According to the modified parameters, it would exist for exactly 0.068 seconds before vanishing. To a warrior, this was easy. Their brains could process visual information in 0.003 seconds. They could aim in 0.015 seconds. They could fire in 0.008 seconds. That left plenty of time to spare. To a human, this should have been impossible. Human reaction time averaged around 0.25 seconds. By the time a human brain registered the target, it would already be gone. But did not wait to see the target. Her rifle was already pointing at the upper left corner. Her finger had already begun to squeeze the trigger, and when the target appeared, her bullet was already traveling toward it. The target shattered into a million fragments of light before it had existed for even 0.02 seconds. The arena fell completely silent. Commander's 4 arms dropped to his sides. His orange eyes widened with an emotion that looked almost like shock. Another target appeared, this time in the lower right, was already turning, already firing. The target exploded before any alien eye could track her movement. A third target, a fourth, a fifth, each one destroyed in the fraction of a second it took to materialize. "That is impossible," an ambassador hissed. "She is not reacting to the targets, she is anticipating them." Researcher was frantically working her data tablet, her orange eyes glowing with excitement. "Pattern recognition," she whispered. "She has analyzed the algorithm. She knows where the targets will appear before they appear." In the booth, Private was counting under his breath. 50, 51, 52. They were only 15 seconds into the challenge and had already hit more targets than most species hit in the full 60 seconds. Captain allowed himself a small smile. This was why he had chosen her, not because she was the fastest shooter in the Korean military, though she was, not because she had the steadiest hands, though she did, but because Park had something that no training could provide. She could see patterns that others could not see. She could predict the future. On the firing range, moved like water, her rifle swept across the arena in smooth arcs, firing with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Target after target shattered into light. The score counter on the wall climbed higher and higher. 100, 200, 300. The warriors had stopped laughing. Their faces now showed something else, something that looked almost like fear. 400, 500. Commander turned to his technical officer, his voice a harsh whisper. "Change the algorithm, now." The technical officer hesitated. "Commander, that would be against protocol." "Do it." The officer's 4 hands moved across his console. Deep within the arena's computer system, the targeting algorithm shifted. The patterns that had been reading, the sequences she had learned to predict, suddenly changed to pure randomness. In the arena, felt the shift immediately. The next target appeared in a location she had not expected. She fired anyway, her instincts taking over, but the shot went wide. The target vanished untouched. She missed the next one too, and the next. In the viewing gallery, they began to relax. Commander's mandibles spread in a satisfied smile. "As I suspected," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "A trick, nothing more. She memorized the standard patterns. Now that we have introduced true randomness, she fails like all the others." The ambassadors began clicking in agreement. The mood in the gallery shifted back to comfortable superiority. But Captain was still watching's face, and what he saw there made his smile return. She was not panicking, she was not giving up. She was adapting, because that was what humans did best. 30 seconds had passed. Score stood at 547 targets. It was an incredible number by human standards. It was a respectable number even by galactic standards. But it was not enough to beat the record, and her accuracy had dropped dramatically since the algorithm had changed. She was missing 1 out of every 3 shots now. Each miss felt like a small defeat. Each miss made the aliens in the gallery more confident, more smug, more certain that humanity was exactly as weak as they had believed. Commander was speaking to the other ambassadors, his deep voice carrying across the viewing gallery. You see, this is the problem with lesser species. They can learn tricks, yes. They can memorize patterns, but when faced with true chaos, with the unpredictability of real combat, they fail. This is why they have dominated warfare for 60 million years. We do not rely on tricks. We are simply superior. Private's voice came through's earpiece, tight with frustration. Lieutenant, they changed the targeting algorithm to pure random generation. There are no patterns to predict anymore. I am so sorry. I should have anticipated this. Not your fault, replied between shots. Her arms were starting to ache. Human muscles were not designed for this kind of sustained precision work. Another disadvantage, another weakness. What do we do? Asked. We only have 30 seconds left. Fired at another target. Missed. Fired again. Hit. The score counter climbed slowly now, nothing like the rapid pace from before. In her mind, she saw the faces of her family. Her mother, who had worked so hard. Her father, who had never understood her but had supported her anyway. Her little brother, who had sent her a message before she left Earth. Make them respect us. Make them respect us. Such a simple request, such an impossible task. She thought about what it said, pure random generation. No patterns. In theory, this meant that predicting the targets was mathematically impossible. No amount of human intelligence could guess where truly random targets would appear. But something was bothering her, something about the way the aliens had set up this test. She fired again, hitting a target in the corner of the arena. As she did, she noticed something. The holographic projectors on the walls made a faint humming sound each time they activated. It was barely audible, almost completely drowned out by the sounds of her rifle. But it was there. Each projector had a slightly different tone. She said suddenly, "The projectors, they make noise before the target appears." There was a pause, then's voice came back confused. What? When a projector activates, there is a sound. A very small sound. But it happens maybe half a second before the target actually appears. Lieutenant, that sound is in a frequency range that humans cannot hear. It is designed for ears. They can hear it, but it is supposed to be too faint for them to use as an advantage. It is just a side effect of the technology. Felt something click in her mind, but your equipment can hear it. Silence on the other end. Then, oh my God. Can you convert the audio to spatial coordinates? Yes, I can. But Lieutenant, I would have to feed the information to you in real time. You would have to trust the audio completely. You would have to fire without seeing the target at all. 20 seconds left. Score was at 612. She was going to lose. She was going to fail. Humanity was going to be classified as a servant race, their resources taken, their people reduced to laborers for the greater species. Unless she did something crazy. Do it, she said. Lieutenant, are you sure? If this does not work, do it now. She heard him take a deep breath. Then his fingers began flying across his equipment, writing new code, rerouting audio channels, creating something that had never existed before. In the span of seconds, he built a system that converted alien sound frequencies into directional data that could be sent through a standard earpiece. Ready, he said. I will tell you the direction and distance. You will have to fire blind. Nodded, even though he could not see her. Then she did something that made every alien in the gallery gasp. She closed her eyes. Commander actually took a step back. What is she doing? Has her mind broken? The ambassadors stopped clicking. They stopped humming. Every being in the gallery stared at the small human woman standing in the arena with her eyes closed, her rifle raised, apparently waiting to die. Researcher was the only one who leaned forward with interest rather than confusion. She is adapting, she whispered. She is doing something new. In the arena, Herd's voice in her ear. Projector 7C activating. Upper left 30 degrees 15 meters. She turned, she aimed based only on his words. She fired. The target shattered. Projector 12A lower right, 60 degrees 20 meters. Turn, aim, fire, hit. Projector 3F center high, 10 degrees 8 meters. Turn, aim, fire, hit. The gallery had gone completely silent, not the mocking silence of before, but a different kind of silence. The silence of beings witnessing something impossible. His eyes were still closed. She was not seeing the targets at all. She was listening to his voice, trusting him completely, firing at things she could not see based on instructions she could barely understand. And she was hitting every single one. How? Commander's voice was barely a whisper. How is this possible? Researcher was practically bouncing with excitement. She removed her reliance on visual processing entirely. She is using a different sense. No, not a sense. A technology. They built something. In the middle of the competition, they built something new. The score counter was climbing again. 650, 700, 750. 10 seconds left. His voice was getting faster, his instructions blending together into a continuous stream of data. Moved like a machine now, turning and firing with mechanical precision. Her eyes remained closed. Her face was calm. Only the sweat on her forehead showed the intense concentration required to process so much information so quickly. She passed the record with 5 seconds left. The score counter turned gold, indicating a new galactic best. But she did not stop. She kept firing, kept hitting, kept proving that humanity was more than the sum of their weaknesses. The final horn sounded, lowered her rifle and opened her eyes. Final score, 1,247 targets. Nearly 50% higher than any score in galactic history. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence in the gallery was so complete that could hear her own heartbeat. Then slowly, Researcher began to clap. It was an awkward sound since her hands were not really designed for applause, but the intention was clear. One by one, other aliens joined in. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. Commander remained still, his 4 arms hanging at his sides, his orange eyes fixed on the small human woman who had just destroyed everything he believed about the superiority of his species. In his entire life, spanning nearly 400 years, he had never felt so completely wrong. Captain allowed himself to smile fully now. He had known was special. He had known she would surprise them, but even he had not expected this. Private's voice came through his earpiece, thick with emotion. You did it. You actually did it. Did not smile. She simply stood there, holding her rifle, looking up at the viewing gallery where hundreds of aliens were staring at her with new eyes. She thought about her grandmother's stories, about her mother's sacrifices, about her little brother's request. Make them respect us. She had done more than that. She had made them afraid. And somehow that felt even better. The hours after the competition were chaos. News of victory spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by communication networks that connected 1,000 star systems. Within minutes, her face was appearing on screens from the core worlds to the outer territories. Within hours, her name was being spoken by beings who had never even heard of Earth before. The reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated, though a small furry race that had been classified as servants for centuries sent a message of congratulations that was so excited it was almost incoherent. An aquatic species that had long chafed under dominance requested an immediate diplomatic meeting with Earth's representatives. Even the young who had spoken of mercy earlier approached Captain to express his admiration. But others were not so pleased. Commander had retreated to his quarters immediately after the competition ended. He had not spoken to anyone. He had not filed the official report. He had simply walked away, his four arms hanging limply at his sides, his orange eyes staring at nothing. Now, several hours later, he sat alone in the darkness of his room. The walls were covered with trophies and medals from his long career, certificates of excellence, awards for teaching, commendations from the High Council, a lifetime of achievements that had once filled him with pride. Now they felt like lies. A chime sounded at his door. He ignored it. It sounded again and again. "Enter," he finally growled. The door slid open to reveal Researcher. She stepped inside carefully, her orange eyes adjusting to the darkness. "Commander, I came to discuss what happened today." "What is there to discuss? The human one, she beat the record, she made fools of us all." Moved closer, her robe swishing softly against the floor. "She did win, but Commander, do you understand how? Do you understand what it means?" Turned to look at her. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes that she had never expected to see in a warrior: doubt. "I have been fighting for 350 years, he said slowly. "I have trained thousands of soldiers. I have studied every species in the galaxy, and in all that time, I have never seen anything like what that human did today." "She adapted," said. "When we changed the algorithm, when we took away her ability to predict the targets, she found another way." In the middle of a competition, in seconds, she built an entirely new method of fighting and mastered it instantly. Shook his head. "That should not be possible." Sat down across from him, something that would normally be considered extremely disrespectful in culture, but did not seem to notice, or perhaps he no longer cared. "Commander, I have been studying humans since first contact. At first I thought they were simply a weak species that had gotten lucky. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. Their reflexes were slow, their senses were dull, and their bodies were fragile. By every measure we use to evaluate potential, they should have gone extinct millions of years ago. And yet they did not. And yet they did not." Leaned forward. "Do you know why?" Remained silent. "Because they refused to accept their limitations. Every time the universe told them they could not do something, they found a way to do it anyway. They could not run fast, so they invented vehicles. They could not fly, so they built aircraft. They could not survive in the cold, so they made clothing and fire. They could not remember everything, so they created writing. Every single weakness became a reason to innovate." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Commander, we have dominated the galaxy because we were born perfect. Our bodies are weapons. Our minds are fast. Our lives are long. We did not need to innovate because we did not need to change." "You are saying that is a weakness." "I am saying that the humans are different. They are not strong despite their weaknesses. They are strong because of their weaknesses. Every limitation forces them to think in new ways. Every challenge makes them more dangerous." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And Commander, they have only been in space for 18 months. Imagine what they will become in 18 years, in 1800 years." Sat very still for a long moment. Then slowly he stood up. His forearms flexed, and for a moment he looked like the warrior he had always been: dangerous, powerful, unbeatable. But his eyes had changed. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something new. Respect. In another part of the station, was dealing with her own aftermath. The small quarters assigned to the human delegation had become crowded with visitors. Aliens of various species came to offer congratulations, to ask questions, to simply stare at the human who had broken the unbreakable record. Handled each visitor with patience and politeness, answering their questions as best she could, accepting their praise with humble nods. But inside she was exhausted. When the last visitor finally left, she sank down onto her bed and closed her eyes. Her arms were shaking from the strain of holding the rifle for so long. Her head was pounding from the intense concentration required to process audio instructions. Her entire body felt like it had been wrung out like a wet cloth. Captain sat down beside her. "How are you holding up?" "I am tired," she admitted. "More tired than I have ever been in my life." "You should be proud. What you did today will change everything for Earth." Opened her eyes and looked at her captain. "Will it? They are not happy. I could see it on their faces. We embarrassed them. Species like that do not forgive embarrassment easily." Nodded slowly. "You are right. There will be consequences. Some species will try to push back against humanity's new status. Some will try to prove that today was a fluke." He paused. "And some will try to destroy us before we become too powerful." "Then I have made things worse." "No," his voice was firm. "You have made things different. Before today we were nothing. A primitive species that had stumbled into the galaxy by accident. Now we are something. We are a threat, and threats are respected." Sat up slowly, wincing as her muscles protested. "My mother used to say that respect earned through fear is not true respect." Your mother was wise, but she was speaking about relationships between individuals, between nations and species. Respect earned through fear is often the only kind that matters. Put a hand on her shoulder. "What you did today was not about making friends. It was about making them think twice before they decide we are easy prey." The door opened and Private entered. His eyes were bright with excitement and he was carrying a data tablet filled with information. "Lieutenant, Captain, you need to see this." He held up the tablet, showing a stream of messages from across the galaxy. Species after species was sending communications to Earth. Some were diplomatic inquiries. Some were trade proposals. Some were requests for military alliances. And some were challenges. "The High Council has announced that they want a rematch," said, scrolling through the messages. "They say the competition was not fair because we used unauthorized technology. They want to do it again with stricter rules." Felt a cold knot form in her stomach. What kind of rules? No electronic assistance. No equipment modifications. Just the shooter and a standard weapon. Looked up from the tablet. They want to prove that today was a trick, that humans are not really as good as we appeared to be. Captain frowned. "If we refuse, they will say we are cowards, that we can only win by cheating." "And if we accept?" asked. "Then you will have to compete again, without audio assistance, without any help at all." Met her eyes. "Can you do it?" Thought about the competition. About the first half when she had been predicting targets based on pattern recognition. She had been good, very good, but had she been good enough? Without help, her final score would have been around 650. Still impressive. Still beyond what anyone expected from a human, but not enough to beat the record, not enough to prove that humanity deserved respect. She looked at her rifle, lying on the bed beside her. It was just a tool, a piece of metal and plastic that could not function without a human hand to guide it, without a human mind to aim it. "I need to train," she said quietly. "You have been training your whole life," pointed out. "Not for this, not for true randomness. Today I relied on patterns and technology. Tomorrow I need to rely on something else." She picked up the rifle and held it in her hands. "I need to find a way to be faster than I am, to be better than I am." Looked worried. "Lieutenant, with all respect, you cannot just become faster. Human biology has limits." Smiled for the first time since the competition had ended. It was a tired smile, but there was something fierce in it. That is what everyone keeps telling us, and we keep proving them wrong. She stood up, ignoring the protests from her exhausted muscles. "Captain, please accept the challenge. Tell them we will compete again in 1 week." 1 week raised an eyebrow. That is not much time. It will have to be enough. Headed for the door. I have work to do. She walked out into the corridor of the space station, still wearing her competition uniform, still carrying her rifle. Aliens who passed her stopped to stare, some with admiration, some with fear, some with barely hidden anger. She ignored them all. Somewhere in this station, there was a training facility. Somewhere in her mind, there was a way to exceed her limitations. She just had to find it. The week passed like a fever dream. Trained for 18 hours every day, sleeping only when her body absolutely refused to continue. She pushed herself past every limit she thought she had, then found new limits and pushed past those too. Private monitored her vital signs constantly, worried that she would collapse. Captain brought her meals that she barely touched, but she would not stop. She could not stop. The rematch was scheduled for the 7th day, and the entire galaxy would be watching. During her training, something strange happened. Aliens began to appear at the observation windows of the practice range. At first it was just a few curious observers, then dozens, then hundreds. They watched her in silence, their alien faces unreadable, their presence a constant reminder of what was at stake. On the 3rd day, Commander appeared. He stood at the window for a long time, watching fire at targets that appeared and disappeared in fractions of a second. His 4 arms were crossed over his massive chest. His orange eyes tracked her every movement with the intensity of a predator studying prey. But when finally took a break, exhausted and dripping with sweat, did something unexpected. He entered the practice range. Tensed immediately, her hand moving toward her rifle, saw the movement and raised his 4 hands in a gesture of peace. "I did not come to fight," he said. His voice was quieter than she remembered, less arrogant. "I came to understand." Relaxed slightly but did not lower her guard. "Understand what?" "You," moved closer, his heavy footsteps echoing in the empty range. "In my culture, strength is everything. We are born strong. We die strong. We do not change because we do not need to change. But you humans are different. You are born weak, and yet you become strong anyway." He stopped a few meters away from her, close enough to talk but far enough to show he meant no threat. "I have watched you train for 3 days now. I have seen you fail. I have seen you fall. I have seen you push your body past the point where any would have stopped, and I have asked myself why." "Why what?" asked. "Why do you not give up?" His voice held genuine confusion. "You have already proven yourself. You have already broken the record. You could walk away now with honor. Instead, you torture yourself trying to do more. Why?" Considered the question for a long moment. Then she set down her rifle and looked up at the massive alien warrior. "On Earth," she said slowly, "there is a story my grandmother used to tell me. Long ago, when humans were just beginning to spread across our world, we encountered many creatures that were stronger than us, faster than us, more deadly than us. By every measure, we should have been nothing more than food for them." She paused, remembering her grandmother's voice telling this story on cold winter nights. "But we survived, not because we were stronger, but because we refused to accept that we were weaker. Every time a predator killed one of us, we learned from it. Every time the world tried to destroy us, we adapted. We invented tools. We invented strategies. We invented ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths." She picked up her rifle again, holding it in front of her like evidence. "This weapon is the result of 10,000 years of refusing to give up. 10,000 years of looking at something that could kill us and asking how we could kill it first." Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "I think I understand," he said. "You do not train because you want to win. You train because you cannot accept losing." Smiled. It was a tired smile but genuine, something like that. The day of the rematch arrived. The arena was packed with more beings than had ever attended a Unity Games event. Screens throughout the galaxy broadcast every moment. Bets were placed on a scale that affected entire planetary economies. The future of humanity's standing in galactic society hung in the balance. Walked to the firing line wearing the same uniform she had worn before. The same rifle hung from her shoulder. The same determined expression was on her face, but something was different. She was not afraid. Commander stood on the observation platform, no longer as a judge but as a witness. Beside him stood Researcher, her data tablet ready to record everything. Captain watched from the human delegation area, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Private was in his booth, but this time he would not be able to help. This time was truly alone. The rules were read aloud by an automated voice. No electronic assistance, no equipment modifications, standard randomized targets, 60 seconds. "Is the contestant ready?" the voice asked. Raised her rifle, ready. Countdown beginning 10, 9, 8. In the viewing gallery, thousands of aliens held their breath. 7, 6, 5. On screens across the galaxy, billions more watched in silence. 4, 3, 2. Thought of her mother, her grandmother, her planet, everything that had led her to this moment. 1, begin. The targets came. They appeared faster than before, smaller than before, more random than before. They had clearly pushed the difficulty to its absolute maximum, determined to prove that a human could not compete without technological assistance. Fired. She was not predicting the targets this time. She was not listening for audio cues. She was doing something else entirely, something she had discovered during her week of brutal training. She was entering a state of mind that humans had known about for thousands of years but had never been able to fully explain. Athletes called it being in the zone. Artists called it flow. Warriors called it the empty mind. Her consciousness seemed to expand, taking in the entire arena at once. Her body moved without conscious thought, guided by instincts that had been sharpened over millions of years of evolution. She was not thinking about hitting the targets. She was simply hitting them. Target after target shattered into light. The score counter climbed with frightening speed. In the viewing gallery, Commander's 4 hands gripped the railing so hard that the metal began to bend. "That is impossible," he whispered. "No being should be able to move like that." Researcher was recording everything, her orange eyes wide with amazement. She is operating below conscious thought. Her brain has delegated all functions to her motor cortex and cerebellum. She is not deciding to fire. She is simply firing. "But how?" demanded. Human brains have a feature we do not fully understand. Under extreme pressure, they can bypass normal processing entirely. They call it instinct, but it is more than that. It is as if they have a second mind, one that operates faster and more efficiently than their conscious awareness. The timer reached 30 seconds. Score was already at 700. She was on pace to beat her own record, without any assistance, without any tricks, with nothing but her own body and mind. The aliens in the gallery began to make sounds of astonishment. They clicked rapidly. They hummed in frequencies that indicated shock. Even the warriors, beings who prided themselves on showing no emotion, could not hide their disbelief. 45 seconds. Score, 1050. Captain allowed himself to hope. Private was openly crying, tears running down his face as he watched his friend achieve the impossible. 55 seconds. Score, 1350. His arms were burning. Her muscles were screaming. Her body was telling her to stop, to rest, to give up. She refused. 60 seconds. Final score, 1412. The horn sounded, lowered her rifle. For a moment she simply stood there, swaying slightly, her entire body trembling with exhaustion. Then the cheering began. It started with the smaller species. The countless races that had lived under dominance for centuries. They cheered and screamed and celebrated as if victory was their own. Because in a way it was. Slowly, other species joined in. Even some of the younger ones who had not yet learned to believe that their species was inherently superior. Commander did not cheer, but he did something that shocked everyone who knew him. He left the observation platform. He walked down to the arena floor. He approached the small human woman who had just proven that everything he believed about the universe was wrong. And he bowed. It was the lowest bow possible in culture, the bow of absolute submission, the bow that warriors gave only to those they considered their betters. The arena fell silent. Lieutenant Park of Earth said, his voice carrying across the sudden quiet. You have shown me something today that I did not think possible. You have shown me that strength is not determined by the body, it is determined by the soul. He straightened up and looked at her with those burning orange eyes. From this day forward, I declare humanity an equal partner in the Galactic Compact. Any species that threatens Earth will answer to the. Looked up at the massive alien warrior. Her body was exhausted, her mind was empty, but her spirit was full. Thank you, Commander, she said quietly. Shook his head. Do not thank me, I did nothing. You earned this. All of you humans have earned this. He turned to face the viewing gallery, raising all 4 arms in a gesture of proclamation. Let it be known throughout the galaxy. Humanity is no longer a lesser species. They are warriors, they are innovators, they are survivors. His voice echoed through the arena, through the station, through the communication networks that carried his words to 100 star systems. And any fool who underestimates them will regret it. 3 months later, returned to Earth. She walked off the shuttle into a crowd of thousands who had gathered to welcome her home. Her family was there. Her mother, crying with joy. Her father, who finally understood why his daughter had spent so much time at the shooting range. Her little brother, who ran forward and hugged her so tightly that she could barely breathe. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Politicians gave speeches about the new era of human-galactic relations. But was not thinking about any of that. She was thinking about a small shooting range in a town near. About hours spent practicing when everyone else was enjoying their youth. About a mother who had believed in her when no one else did. She was thinking about all the humans who had come before her. The hunters who had faced creatures 10 times their size with nothing but stone spears. The warriors who had defended their homes against impossible odds. The scientists who had reached for the stars when everyone said it was impossible. She was one of them now, part of a chain that stretched back millions of years and forward into an infinite future. A reporter pushed through the crowd, holding out a microphone. Lieutenant Park, what do you have to say to the aliens who doubted humanity? Paused, she thought about all the mockery, all the sneering, all the certainty that humans were nothing more than clever animals. Then she smiled. I would tell them the same thing my grandmother told me, she said. Never laugh at someone who refuses to give up, because sooner or later they will prove you wrong. She walked through the crowd toward her family, leaving the cameras and the reporters behind. Above her, the stars shone down on a planet that was no longer alone in the universe. A planet that had earned its place among the stars. A planet called Earth.